Hi, this is Graham from Main Street DBAs. Main Street DBAs is your go-to DBA resource with experts in SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle, just to name a few. So if you'd like a dedicated, incredibly knowledgeable, and friendly DBA on your team, drop us a line at mainstreetdbas.com. Okay, today we're going to discuss Query Store and the Regressed Query Report.
So now we're going to review the Regressed Queries Report in the Query Store database. So this database is great to show any kind of query that has done just that. That is the name of the report. It's regressed in some way, whether it's CPU time, logical reads, or duration. It has gotten worse and it has met the threshold to be considered a regressed query. So let's go ahead and configure the Query Store feature on Query Store Basics. I have created a database and populated 10 million rows into a sales table. And if you've seen my other videos, you'll be familiar with this sales table. I use it a lot. So let's right-click on Query Store Basics and go ahead and enable Query Store. And I chose to do this after I populated the 10 million rows so that data wouldn't confuse us as we went through this demonstration, because those queries would show up in the Query Store. All right, now let's go ahead, turn it on to read write, and we're going to do a data flush interval of 1 minute and a statistics collection interval of 1 minute as well. Oh, let's get it to 1 minute. And this is for the purposes of this demonstration. In your environment, you're going to want to look at what you can realistically achieve. Typically, people want to see this statistics collection interval every hour and then compare it with that metric. Now, let's go ahead and hit OK and refresh. And there we have the Query Store feature. Now let's expand, and there you go, the Regressed Queries Report. All right, you've noticed I've adjusted the recording view. That's because we're going to need a lot of screen space to see this report. Okay, let's go right-click, View Regressed Queries, and initially we don't see anything. Well, in our case, that's because we haven't actually enabled Query Store while we ran any kind of query. But for if you go into the Regressed Queries report and you don't see anything, there are some configurations you can change. Specifically, go over to the right-hand corner in this Configure tab. Open it up. And for us, we want to see within the last 5 minutes. But for yourself, you can actually filter it down to a specific to and from date for recent and along with history. So let's go ahead, click Apply and OK. And again, refresh. And yes, we're not going to see anything because we haven't run a query yet. Okay, let's see if we can get some data to populate this report. And we'll do that by running this query on the sales table, which has 10 million rows of data. But first, let's clear the buffers and clear the procedure cache. Now let's run this query, and while this is running, I'll explain what these 3 lines are. So when the sales table was initially created, it was created with a clustered index. That's what the query is running against now. After this query completes, we're going to document the runtime and then create a non-clustered index with included columns to help out this query. Execute it again, drop that non-clustered index, and then run the query again, and this should populate information into the Regressed Query Report. So as you can see, this query took 14 seconds to complete, and it returned 250,001 rows back. Now let's see if we can't help this query out. Now let's create the non-clustered index. And I'll pause the video while that completes. Okay, now the non-clustered index has been created on the table. Now let's go ahead and run this query again. And again, this last query took 14 seconds. Let's see how quickly this performs. But first, let's get everything out of memory and free proc cache. All right, now let's run the query again with the non-clustered index helping it out. And you can see results were immediately returned. Let's see if the runtime is significantly different. "10 seconds. Not too bad. Not a significant performance improvement, but not the best. Okay, now we're going to drop this non-clustered index and run the query again. First, we're going to free the proc cache and drop clean buffers. Now let's run this query again and see how it performs. And I'll pause the video while this completes. Okay, that query took 14 seconds to execute, just like it did previously. Now let's see if we can get some data to populate in the regressed query report. Okay, so let's crack open the regressed query report. Oh, there you go. It refreshed for me. So you might sometimes encounter when you run queries, especially in a testing environment, that they don't instantaneously show up in the regressed query report. Again, a specific threshold has to be met, and also always review your configuration to see what time frame you're actually trying to evaluate. So here you can see our number one regressed query by the duration is in fact our aggregate query run against the sales table, and you can see the two different plans here. This one, which used the clustered index scan, and this one, which was executed in a lot less time, used the non-clustered index scan. So this is a good way to identify queries that have regressed. So I've used this report to identify queries that have regressed, either through logical page reads, duration, CPU time. It's a great report to help you identify poor performance in your environment. And the reason I use this case is I've actually encountered this issue where a non-clustered index was dropped, query performance started bottoming out, and queries were timing out. So I utilized Query Store to see that in fact there once was a query, or the query that ran actually did use a non-clustered index that was dropped. So this has been a very simplistic, contrived demo of the regressed query report. And whenever you're going to enable Query Store in your environment, make sure that you have enough room on disk for the Query Store, and that you properly size it, and that you enable the proper statistics collection interval that'll be important for you on how you review and understand the statistics gathered. Thank you for watching.